my number 4 quarterback in this year's draft is a guy that's just so incredible as an athlete that you just have to take a look. He's so explosive, and he's immediately the most dangerous player on the field as soon as he steps foot on the field, and that's Jalen Milroe from Alabama. So listen, Jaylen Milroe is a guy that's going to be polarizing in this whole setting, because people are going to get mad if you call him just a running quarterback. And then if you say he's got to work on throwing the football, people get all upset. And here's the thing. Jalen did a lot of great things at Alabama, in particular in 2023. His growth in that season was fantastic. Last year, he regressed a little bit. Generally speaking, this is when I watch Jalen Milroe, this is what I see. He makes hard things look really easy. Really easy. Like too easy. Like, hold on a second. You're not supposed to be able to do that. Whether it's using his legs, throwing the football down the field, he is great throwing the football down the field. However, he can make easy things look hard. And that's something that it's hard to overlook from an NFL evaluator's perspective. Because to be a great NFL quarterback, you have to execute first principles before you can go past the X's and O's. You see, and this is what was so brilliant about guys like Peyton Manning, guys like Tom Brady, and the excellent quarterbacks now. Even Mahomes does this. You've got to make the plays that are there to be made that are easy, because you don't get second chances. You got to make the layups. You have to. If you don't, you can never get to the point where the above the X's and O's traits show up. That's just kind of the nature of the game. Now, in college, you can kind of get away with it because the margin between the great athletes on the field and the average athletes is far different than the margin between the great athletes on the field and the average NFL athlete. That margin is much tighter. So your ability to affect and impact the game as just a unique skill set is minimized, which means you've got to do the basics incredibly well. And that's one area where I think that he has struggled, and he's going to have to show growth. Now, is he tantalizing to select, maybe even late in the second round? Yeah, maybe early in the third round. Why? Because he is the most dangerous person you can put on the football field on the offensive side right away. And when you're snapping him the ball, then the ball is going to go through him. You're going to have to defend him in the run game. You've got to defend down the field because of his ability to throw it down the field. So there's enough there to select him. There's no doubt, which is why he is my 4th quarterback on the board. I think the NFL is going to be polarized on Jalen Milroe, but count me as one of the guys that believe in him. I think the growth that he showed in 23 in the run to that playoff performance and appearance with Nick Saban in his last year was incredible. Was incredible. All of these guys that I'm talking about, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, highly experienced guys. They've done a ton. Okay, now for the 5th spot. This is going to be a little bit different because it was easier for me to land on these top 4, and it's become much more difficult to who's the 5th? And I had a big debate between 5 guys for the 5th spot. So let me list the 5 guys, and then I want to talk about each of them before I actually land on the guy that I'm going to put in that 5th spot. Okay, so here's the group of players that I'm debating between. Will Howard from Ohio State, Kyle McCord from Syracuse, Curtis Rourke from Indiana, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. That's kind of my next group. And there are some other guys that I left out of that, but that's the group that I kind of settled on as who am I taking from that group? Who's elevated themselves, or whose traits do I think belong in the 5th spot versus the 9th spot? I'm not going to rank them all the way to 9, but I just wanted to group them this way to show you that after those top 2, there's a gap. And then after the top 4, there's going to be another gap. There's a chance that all of these 5 guys don't even get drafted. Now, there's a chance that maybe one of these a team falls in love with and selects all the way up into the 3rd round. But I think that the evaluations are going to be all over the place because of some of the strengths and weaknesses that I'll be talking about right here. Let me start with Kyle McCord. Kyle had a really solid year for Syracuse, really solid year after what was an incredibly difficult exit, you would say, from Ohio State. Huge production, led the country in passing, and had a phenomenal year at Syracuse. Now, when I watched the film leading up to the Holiday Bowl, which we had him in, and he played great in down in San Diego, there are a lot of RPOs, and then there are a lot of quick game. And he did a great job of getting the football out of his hands quickly. Now, truth be told, he anticipated much better than he did the previous year at Ohio State. He worked through progressions much better than he did the previous year at Ohio State. And overall, he was just a much better player. Like I said, that's how you lead the country in passing, 368 yards per game. Set an ACC record, by the way, for passing yards in a season at just over, 4,770, something along those lines. He did that in the bowl game. So there's a lot to like about his game, including this idea that he overcame a difficulty already in his life. You see, I used to have this theory, and when I was briefly with the Lions, John Kitna was the starting quarterback. And Josh McCown was one of the backups, and Dan Orlovsky was also with us. And we used to talk a lot about you can't be an only child quarterback. And I'm not talking about where these guys came from an upbringing standpoint, as much as it is that we believed through our history playing the position that it paid huge dividends to go through something difficult, to go through a quarterback battle, to go through something difficult, to be benched at some point in your career, because you learn a lot about yourself. And quarterbacks that just have it handed to them and they're always the number one guy and just, hey, he's QB1, no questions asked. We called them only child quarterbacks. And so there's something to be said about a guy that has dealt with adversity, come through it, and really performed well on the other side. And that's exactly what Kyle McCord did this last year after leaving Ohio State and getting a spot at Syracuse. When I talked to Fran Brown in the lead up to that Holiday Bowl, he kept talking about how he just gave the keys to the program to Kyle McCord. I thought it was so interesting when talking to Fran Brown, because he said, there's me, there's Kyle, and then there's the rest of the coaching staff, not just everybody else, the coaching staff. So he put Kyle above the other coaches in terms of who had the keys to the program. So that's how much he thought of him, his experience level and his maturity. And he delivered with a great season, and Syracuse obviously had a great year. Now, he wouldn't always find the right spot with the football in his past. Sometimes at Ohio State, he would struggle with that. He did a better job of that at Syracuse. But that's one area where I would want to see continued progress from Kyle McCord. All right, here's another one of these five guys. Let's go with Quinn Ewers. Okay, so Quinn Ewers, the potential is obviously there with Quinn Ewers. He has been a highly rated quarterback for a long time, and rightly so. The guy makes a lot of big-time throws, I would say NFL throws. He's smart. He does things from an arm talent perspective that other guys just don't do. He can throw off platform and do it accurately. He can throw going to his left. He can throw going to his right. So there's a lot to love about his game. It is there. Now, I wish he was a little bit bigger. He's only about 210 pounds, 6'2", 210. I think that's led to some of the injury issues that he's had at Texas, and he wasn't always reliable for staying on the field. Now, it was better this last year, but he still got banged up. Arch had to go in. So we've still yet to see Quinn go through a year and not get banged up, and that's worrisome from the NFL's perspective. Potential is there. NFL throws are there. He's got great command of the system. He knows where to go with the football. He's dealt with high pressure environments, being the number one quarterback his whole life, even going up to Ohio State and then back down to Texas. It's been there. Now, he does an amazing job throwing with touch. Great accuracy, and he throws with touch as well or better than anybody else on the list today. Because of that, I do think he can rely on that a little bit too much. So there are times when I'm watching film and I really want him to drive the football into a tight window area, in particular in intermediate zones. And he throws with touch to those zones. And I'm just telling you right now, that won't work all the time at the NFL level. He's going to have to find some more velocity, or at least be willing to step up and really drive the football onto the frame of the wide receiver in some intermediate spots. That's going to be crucial for him. And I think that's one of the reasons why he won't get selected up high is the injury issue. And then that issue, like I said, relies a lot on touch. All right, next up, Curtis Rourke. I'm a huge fan of Curtis Rourke, and you might even be surprised that I put him in this group of 5. I believe Curtis Rourke is going to find a spot in the NFL. He's huge, first of all, big frame. And I tell you what, man, when you watch his film, majority of the film outside of playing Ohio State, at Ohio State and Notre Dame, it was exquisite. When he's in rhythm, man, he is in rhythm. And he does an incredible job of finding the right spot with the ball. His offense in his past was not like the offense that he ran at Indiana, and yet he came in and he learned it right away, and he did a great job with it. He dissected coverages really fast. He goes in there to Indiana. He's the reason why they're a playoff team. Second team all Big Ten, kind of led them 29 passing touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, makes great decisions with the ball. He's got 46 career starts, also going back to his time at Ohio. Like, he's 6'5", 223 pounds. I like this guy a lot. When you watch his film, you're going to see hyper accurate. He's an anticipatory thrower. He can do a great job from the shotgun, getting the ball out quickly and really hurting the defense, in particular with things like tight end routes and running back routes. You saw some of that if you were watching YouTube. Now, what's going to be the knock on Curtis Rourke? Well, he's immobile largely. And so NFL evaluators are not going to love that he doesn't move around very well. And he was taken out of that rhythm that I just gushed about very quickly. Ohio State took him out of that rhythm incredibly quickly. Notre Dame took him out of that rhythm incredibly quickly. Now, do I think it was unfair, some of the criticism that Indiana and maybe Curtis got during the course of the playoff? Absolutely. Absolutely. That team only lost 2 games, and it was to the 2 teams that ended up playing for the national championship. Like, I think we all forget that. Just because he has IU on his helmet doesn't mean that we can just take shots. He had a phenomenal year, and in a lot of respects, he's going to be a guy that NFL evaluators will look at and be like, he could probably be on my team, and he likely could be a backup in the NFL. Let's see. I've got a couple of more here. Let's go with Will Howard. Will Howard from Ohio State. I think he's actually going to get more positive reviews as people evaluate his game further, getting closer to the draft. Will Howard played unquestionably his best football late in the season. I don't think people realize how good Howard was in the playoff. Now, did he play great against Michigan? No, he did not. It was part of that getting banged up and possibly getting nicked up from a head injury perspective. It could have been. It could have been. But when he got into the playoff, man, that dude was lights out. He was lights out. Sets a completion percentage record at the Ohio State University, which that's something to be said for that. He leads them to a national championship under all of that pressure and scrutiny, even after losing to Michigan. Third team all Big Ten, 43 career starts, going back to 27 at Kansas State, and then obviously this year. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. He's run the football well in his past. And like I said, you turn on that film in the playoff, man, and it is really good. He's got great command of what's going on. And in fact, if you talk to Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, they will tell you that he had at his disposal a lot of times out there the ability to get Ohio State into the correct play. And you only do that. Think about it now. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are like 2 of the most experienced and smartest guys in football. And they're giving Will Howard the keys to the castle on the field in some of the most crucial points in the season and in their careers in a lot of cases in terms of the pressure to win last year at Ohio State. It speaks to the level of maturity, experience, and also general smarts from Will Howard. Real good command on the field. So I like his game. And again, when you watch it, he anticipated really well in the playoff. The last guy I will talk about is Dillon Gabriel. Gabriel is like this quintessential point guard on the field. Plays quickly. You can tell he processes information quickly. He's very smart. The ball rarely goes to the wrong spot. if you take a look at that game against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, you will see a guy manipulating the pocket beautifully. He did that also in the midseason win over Ohio State. Listen, it's not his fault that that team got completely ambushed by the Death Star Supernova Ohio State team in the Rose Bowl. Like, the Oregon defense had no shot, and thus that Oregon offense had no shot. In fact, the only reason that they were even, I don't want to say in the game, but got up off the mat is because of what Dillon Gabriel did in the late second quarter and into the third quarter in the Rose Bowl. Like, this guy is an excellent player. He set an FBS record for total touchdowns with 189 and starts with 63, passing the former Oregon quarterback, now Bronco quarterback, Bo Nix. He was a Heisman finalist in 2024. He played at UCF. He played at Oklahoma. He played at Oregon. So you know he can come in, learn a new system, and then put it into implementation. He did it right away at Oregon. His size is not there. That's obviously going to be a hindrance. And it's one of the reasons why I'm not going to put him at number 5. And that's where I'll go in terms of who goes to number 5. It's not going to be Dillon Gabriel. I think that the size is just too much for me to overcome. At the NFL level, it's a big man's game, and only standing 6 foot, you better have rare traits elsewhere. And that's not really what Gabriel has. I thought about all of these guys. At first, I was kind of leaning towards Kyle McCord. Then I went towards a Quinn Ewers. And then I finally, as I was watching that playoff run, and I was watching what Will Howard did and his size, his ability to run, his anticipation of the playoffs, I'm going to go with Will Howard from Ohio State at number 5. With the caveat being that I don't think it's a clear-cut difference between him and those other 4 guys that I talked about. The clear-cut difference is between 4 and 5 and then 2 and 3. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.